Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of Art of the Beholder, a show dedicated to all things eclectic in the world of art. I'm your host, Novo Day, and today we're going to be talking about art in horror, focusing on the niche subgenre of body horror, your favorite. You're welcome. To hash things out, we're once again joined by our favorite flesh-rotting, fused set of body parts. Oh, he was happy to hear that. And that is Mr. Philip Church of philipchurch.com. Welcome back, you fused, beautiful creature, you.
Yeah, I was going to say, after all these years, I'm surprised that face registered as like happy, but we'll get there. But thanks for having me. It's good to be here. I was going to joke.
Fourth annual Halloween special.
Well, I was going to make some kind of like nook or cranny joke about like, without exploring every little weird nook and cranny of like body horror, just a specific niche. But yeah, then calling me like a weird flesh golem, that works too.
All joking aside, he's a beautiful creature. You finally get to see him, guys. Look at him. Look at him. He's not AI like we're trying to make you believe he was.
All you haters, stop.
He's a real person.
AI doesn't cry itself to sleep at night.
And you don't have to cry yourself to sleep tonight either, guys, because we're talking about your favorite subject for Halloween, and that's body horror. Now, let's tell the good people the why before the why, because, sometimes we have to do some soul searching, Philip, to pick our Halloween specials.
You got to deep inside and go all over.
And really, pull our guts out, pun intended.
Turn yourself upside down.
Exactly. You're reading my mind.
Inside out, some might say.
Now, usually we do, we pick a film. We pick a TV show. It's like that kind of media. Last year, we did a bio show. This year, guys, we're going genre, okay? So you're going to bear with us. And now I will tell you why. We're going genre because, simply put, there's a new flesh-eating, dominating game in town in the horror world. Something we've seen more of in the last year or two than any other subgenre. A new, emerging, disfigured king and queen. Yes, something that will fuse with you, change you, transform you. But the question is, why? Why has body horror become so prevalent in the last year or two? And that's what we're going to explore today. Now, before we can discuss, of course, we all need a little background. First, let's define it, Philip. If you don't know, Philip and Riles, I'm looking at you.
Philip, I'm Philip.
Philip, I was about to say,
pause was perfect.
Riles, I go, Riles, I'm looking at you.
Finally, looking
body, yes,
right at you.
Yes, right at you.
You gotta beep 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 beep
beep beep right at you. I wish I could be like, this is him right here, but I don't want to embarrass.
I
don't want to embarrass the shit out of him.
Put the black bar over his eye.
We could do it that way. Ooh,
give it a mild blur.
There's so much more we can do with video now. Like there's the logistics are endless.
Or just make a body horror version of him and be like, we see you.
We see you. Ooh, AI. Now the AI will come in finally. Yep. Philip is the mastermind
behind.
That's why
I'm co-producer, baby. That's why I have 50% of the rights to this whole shindig.
That's why
You heard it.
Horror maestro. 50%. We'll have to talk about that after the show. I'm not sure about 50%. 15, 25. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out in post.
My guys will call your guys.
Yeah, we'll have the lawyers talk. So again, first let's define it. What it is, body horror. For all the people that don't know, and here's what I was trying to do. Riles, I'm looking at you. Body horror, very simply, is a subgenre of horror that focuses on disturbing, grotesque, or unsettling violations of the human body. It usually involves themes like, there's 4 subgenres to the subgenre: transformation or mutation. So that's unnatural changes to the body, e.g. monstrous growths, merging with machines, or uncontrollable mutations. Mutilation, number 2, is mutilation or dismemberment. So that's graphic or symbolic depictions of injury, disfigurement, or invasive surgery. Number 3 is loss of bodily control. So that's parasites, disease, possession, or other forces taking over one's body. And number 4 is dehumanization, blurring the lines between human and non-human, often evoking disgust, fear, or existential dread. So think of the Borg, right? The key element, guys, okay, I'm glad I'm glad you were buckled. I know that the background's a little bit of the boring part. We're gonna get to the fun part. Here's the takeaway. The key element is that the horror arises directly from what happens to the body.
If
Okay.
you watch something happen and your skin crawls or you
Mm.
stay still in your seat, there's a good chance that was body horror, baby.
Because there's a lot of body horror and other horror. Let's make that distinction. So, like, a lot of people consider Alien, a form of body horror when the xenomorph bursts out of at the chest of a human or whatever.
John Hurt.
That is technically body horror, but it wouldn't like that feature would be considered a creature feature, right? Because the emphasis is on the alien, not the body horror. And the body horror isn't, there's
It's
no
but a fraction of the
symbolic.
movie as
Right.
well.
And that it's more of the visual component to really tell the story of the xenomorph in this example than to really be a part of the story, right? The body horror is usually, as already discussed, symbolic, or there's elevated horror here. It's going deeper than what.
I'm also curious about going back to the loss of bodily control section with the possession aspect. I personally do not factor in like demonic and supernatural types of
Mm,
possession into body horror as much as I do the other more like bioorganic or
totally.
cosmic and what have you. So
Yes.
personally,
The
while
Lovecraftian body horror.
well, I would lump that in. Lovecraftian, yes. I'm talking more like, for instance, The Exorcist. How there's like
Ooh,
the head
yeah.
spins around, the skin becomes mutilated by the possession, but it's something about the fact that, well, she's
Oh,
possessed by an actual demon, that
that's
there's
a good
something
point.
different about that.
I wouldn't consider that a body horror focus either.
Right, not a focus, a background feature to increase the overall horror, because it's one thing to be like, "Oh, she's possessed," but looking at her like that,
Yeah.
as well as, again, like, the head twisting around of just, "Oh, like, you can't do that." Like, it is a fantastic background thing. It is seated in tons of movies. Again, Event Horizon, one of my favorite horror movies ever, has the elements of body horror all throughout it. It is
Mhm.
another sort of cosmic horror, if you will, depending on how you look at it,
Yeah.
with the most overt part being where he literally gouges out his own eyes,
Yeah.
right? That is an aspect of body horror. That's not to say that Event Horizon is a body horror movie. It
Right.
is way more, I don't know, it's just it's suspenseful in a different way.
It's a component like yeah, and this is why
But
it's always
but
been
it has become,
right.
there are
This is
movies
why
where that is the focus now, and it has been a main component, but that has grown over the decades, and that's exactly what we're gonna lay it out.
exactly. And I think that's what people are used to is that it being a component of some other bigger form of storytelling. It's not the focus. Where in the last year or two, it has become such a focus. And my God, why? And I
Yeah,
feel
more
like
than
there's
the
a
last
lot of
few, but
reasons.
definitely recently. I would say last 5 years or so. It is really is its own
You think even
genre.
in 5 years?
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay, I would say more the last year or two. Ooh, so we're already doing it. Where there's a lot of
It's always gonna happen.
juicy,
It's not a when, it's not an if, but a when.
yeah. And we'll hash it out in the discussion
You will see
section
the vein in his head as
before.
as I
Yeah,
wax
finally,
on.
guys, you're welcome. I know what you've all been waiting for. So again, we did what we always do. Me and Philip have a tendency to sidetrack. No surprise.
We have
So
fun, sue us.
to bring it home, the key element is that the horror arises directly from what happens to the body, rather than from external monsters or settings. It taps into primal fears of vulnerability, decay, and the betrayal of one's own flesh. So, guys, there is so much to talk about. But before we do, just a quick word from one of our sponsors.
Support for this show is brought to you by novel Till the Bitter Endemic. What if there was a happy ending to a pandemic? Perhaps an unexpected love story. After Daisy gets thrust into mandatory quarantine for an infection she can't explain, it's up to her to unravel the truth as to what's behind it and what she can ultimately do to escape it. But she can't do this alone, and that's where she finds not only herself, but a very special person that opens their heart for the betterment of their survival. Find out how in Till the Bitter Endemic. Available now on Amazon in all major formats.
Now, back to the show. So here's what we're going to do, guys. This is a genre piece, and the best way to do a genre piece is kind of break up talking about body horror through a historical context. So what I did was I thought a good starting point to hash things out with you guys is to talk about, of course, to start with The Godfather, the king of body horror, and that is Mr. David Cronenberg.
Begin at the beginning.
Begin at the beginning, baby. Because we really saw body horror become more of the focused feature of the storytelling and narrative in the 80s, of course, in film, right? Since such a visual medium. Notable entries in the Cronenberg catalog include, of course, 1981 Scanners, 1983 Videodrome, and the seminal 1986 The Fly. Before I gush about the symbolic nature of the body horror in these three films, how'd you feel about going back to some of these old Cronenberg films?
It's like watching old family movies, you know? It's
Just makes
comforting
you feel
stuff.
good inside.
It's so
Like The
it's so
Thing.
interesting watching these things, and especially the fact that we even have the, like, upscaled HD, if not sometimes 4K versions, of some of these classics, the way that technology is these days. Because you grew up watching this stuff on VHS
Mhm.
when everything was just a little blurrier, and it made it just sink in more. You couldn't quite, like, dissect it too much, and so it was perfect because he knew the line to walk between, if I go too far with this, that no one's gonna watch it, right?
Right.
I mean, these still, like, were movies, like, mainstream-ish movies, and you could only do so many grotesque things before people would be like, "This is not gonna play in our theater."
Mm.
So, he
There
was
is a line.
there was a line, and it's getting, thanks to Cronenberg
Yeah.
figuring out, "Okay, if I write this insane sci-fi
If it's
plot."
too much, it's too much.
Right.
Like,
I mean,
dear
genuinely, you
God.
can only show so much stuff on screen. So, if, I mean, think about, back in the 80s thing, it was still kind of a different time. So to be able to get away with the kinds of things that certain, like, Italians were doing in the 70s,
Yeah.
the like the amount of gore and stuff, that, not to say it didn't exist previously, but not in a mainstream way. So
Right.
he was able to come up with these elevated plots, like, oh, like psychic this, and weird conspiracy that, or just mad scientist, but taking really interesting tropes, writing good scripts, but also having these, but just to go balls to the wall and just show
Yeah.
you some disgusting stuff that made you go like, oh my God, like, what?
It sears in your memory. It burns in your memory. And that's the beauty of
Seeing James Woods.
yeah, Phil, exactly. Yeah,
I can't not remember that.
that's the beauty of filmmaking, because a great filmmaker is going to use something like that to try to convey or tell or symbolize something deeper in the story that is mirroring the plotting and narrative. So in Scanners, 1981, Scanners, like, the if you dig deep, the hidden meaning, if you will, or the deeper meaning, is it's a film trying to talk about the mind's power is inseparable from the body. In Videodrome, it's trying to tell us that technology isn't just a tool, it rewires us psychologically and physically. And in The Fly, of course, transformation is inevitable. Aging, illness, the
Evolution.
scientific overreach will alter us, and there is nothing we can do to stop it. We are powerless to stop it. But, it's not just explicitly saying these things to you, right? We literally see Jeff Goldblum turn into a fly and his face fall off. It
He vomits
melts.
acid
Yeah.
onto flesh and it starts to dissolve.
And yeah, going back to, I feel like this is where we have to do this.
Yeah, it wasn't just gore for weirdness sake, like, because again, anybody could do that. This, like, there were, again, real plots. This was a genuinely engaging stuff, not just a hilarious, 70s dude with a 9mm just filmed his backyard fantasy on a $5,000 budget. These, like The Fly went all the hell out. Like, that, there's nothing. They did not pull punches with that one, right? Like,
We've never seen something like The Fly. I mean, and this was a remake of the original Fly, right?
true. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, Vincent Price's original was very different.
With the big mask. And
So it's not like it
Yeah.
was an original's concept, but still, this it was clearly a wholly unique and movie of the times. It was, they explored more than just the man versus science. Have we gone too far, kind of thing.
And there was definitely, we should say this before the internet just roasts us to death like they normally do,
They can
is
bring it.
there was body horror or focused body horror before this. I just feel like it hit the mainstream in the 80s and in this particular medium of
Right.
film.
Right.
You
Again,
know,
that
we
was
had
my
seen it in
yeah.
comics, graphic novels. We'd seen it in obviously paintings, stuff we've covered on the show, Giger, stuff like that. We've seen it in different media, but it didn't hit the mainstream like this until the 80s, where we could see it and they had the practical, they had the budgets, the production values, and finally the practical effects, like the ability to do practical effects that we've never been seen before. Because to Philip's point of the original Fly and stuff like that, it was it wasn't
They did their best too.
yeah, but it didn't make your skin crawl. It
No,
didn't
exactly.
it
It
didn't
was
sear
borderline
in your
goofy because
memory.
they
Yeah,
couldn't do
they didn't
as
have the
serious. It was just a
it was
giant
just a
fly's head on
costume.
like a
Yeah,
guy. He was just
it's
like,
just a
"Oh, I'm a
costume
fly
head.
man." Like it's,
Yeah,
again, they did the best they could because that's all you could get away with, and no one
he's
had
a
done
fly man,
anything.
guys.
Those were literally some of the first movies, period.
Yeah,
So they did what they did because that's all they could have done, and that's the only reason that we are where we are. Just this, with anything else is music. Like we have anything you could think of now in 2025, but people have been honing these, skills with obviously music much longer than film, but just still, that's what happens to
yeah,
art.
yeah,
Film just happened to also get fast tracked to where you get forward to today, but it's its own mainstream genre. But yeah, back then it was burgeoning along with the horror stuff, right?
yeah.
That, like I said, there are touches of this, which I'm curious what other things maybe came to your mind, but especially with like in the 80s, it's hard to blur the line, or sorry, it's the line is blurry and it's hard to sometimes distinguish because you've got these other fantastic things like American Werewolf in
Yeah,
Paris, or
yeah,
in London. Sorry, London.
yeah.
Yes, more supernatural to an extent, like I was saying earlier, where
Like
like The
creature
Exorcist,
feature, but the
right?
transformation scene is
Exactly.
bonkers.
That's, and that stands out. I do like. It's not like werewolf movies had never been made, but
Right.
that is as much a
But
part
those
of that
practical
film
effects were,
as
oh,
the actual deaths, as the other parts, as the other things. Though those are
yeah,
arguably the most famous parts. So it is something to say about that sensation, that experience of watching something so visceral that
yeah.
it just truly evokes your own reaction. And it's not that it wasn't seen in other places, but for it, yeah, again, for it to not be about a werewolf or again a zombie or a demon, for it to somehow find its own other way into it was what was so unique and coming out of nowhere and was good to finally bring to a more mainstream audience.
There's other I wouldn't even say honorable mentions, just notable entries in the 80s that we have to talk about before we move on to the 90s. And that is, of course, John Carpenter's The Thing, 1982, Stuart Gordon's Reanimator, 1985,
Oh,
From Beyond,
Reanimator.
1986. Yeah.
Oh, From Beyond.
That was that's Reanimator is a take on a Lovecraft story, right?
Mhm. Very Lovecraftian,
And then of course,
as is From Beyond.
yeah,
But then also, yeah, Clive Barker's Hellraiser.
Hellraiser,
That's like a weird
1987.
combination of a horror movie and a Bond film.
I want to see that
Uh,
movie.
I would watch that movie too.
I
No,
would.
Hellraiser is another one where it walks the line, right? Because again, it's demonic, it is supernatural, but the amount of body horror in it
Yeah.
is inarguable.
Clive Barker's Hellraiser, as well as probably some not so famous ones in the West,
Oh, but Society
is
was great.
Society 1989 and Tetsuo
Such
the
a
Iron Man 1989
weird,
as well.
also very niche. That's a Japanese one too.
Right.
Nearly impossible to watch, honestly. I get how if you were super into it and had nothing to do back in the 80s, you could do that. But I remember hearing about it and getting to watch Tetsuo, and I was just like, is this a movie? This feels like a weird collection of shorts, or just somebody just filmed a handful of scenes and said, how do I put these in order?
Yeah.
Or something. But another
That
one
sounds
I
about
want to
right.
bring up
Ooh.
as a passing thing, but again, one of the moments that stands out to me the absolute most in RoboCop is that dude who got doused in the waste, the like radioactive whatever, the goo, whatever it
Ooh,
was.
I don't remember.
Oh,
I remember
the
the
guy, he
the
starts like
practical effects
melting.
on
He
like the
starts
head
like
explosions and
melting,
stuff.
and then he's like screaming, he's like, "Help me!" And he wanders in front of a speeding car and just gets exploded.
I remember those practical effects from RoboCop,
Oh,
where it was like,
that's what I'm saying. It culminates.
I,
It's
I,
all of it is
and I
again like
think
that's it.
were they
That
rated
part.
R then? I
Oh
remember there was a
yes.
phase where
Oh,
some of those films were still
RoboCop.
PG-13.
RoboCop is rated R for sure.
But remember that like there was this weird time, like 40 years ago, I think 80s still, where some of these
It was a
films were
different
like
time.
PG-13,
Yeah,
right?
it was a
PG-13,
different time.
but then it was like gratuitous, like violence that should have been R, maybe even like at NC-17. And for some reason, like just the standards were so different back then. Let's pull it back. Let's do a Novo pullback. So in the 1990s, the subgenre went a little dark, guys. It went a little dark, and I think
It
part of the
went
reason
sci-fi
is
because the
it
90s
lost a
was
bit of its traction in the market, right?
yeah.
But there were still notable entries, so let's talk about them. So we have, of course, Candyman, 1992, Species, which kind of me up as a kid a little bit, 1995,
Really?
like with some of the sexual imagery, some of like,
Well, sure,
like the
like a
tentacle porn
scary
almost
little bitch.
aspect of it, where I was like, dear God, like what am I seeing? I remember. Do you remember being that kid, or being, I mean, young enough but also old enough as a kid where you're like, I probably shouldn't be seeing this. This is probably not for children.
Oh, well, sure.
I've two older
Some of my
brothers,
favorite
so
movies
they
are
would
that
sit
way.
me down and we would watch just a T-book tangent corner. They would have me watch Child's Play. I was like really young. Nightmare on Elm Street, the classics, right? And then I'll never forget, once I really got into it, them watching Army of Darkness
Yes.
and
Classic.
not letting me see all of it. And then it became one of my favorite kind of cult classic movies as a kid. As I got a little older and I was able to go to Blockbuster and just rent it, right? But pull it back, yes. We have
I feel
Cronenberg's
like you lost
film,
your own thread.
another Cronenberg's film, Crash, 1996, and The Faculty. People forget there's a lot of body horror in 1998's The Faculty with Jon Stewart even making a cameo.
Oh, yeah.
But like I guess
What's his name? Josh Hartnett.
Hartnett. Oh yeah,
And
the heartthrob of the 90s.
Frodo.
Yeah, Frodo. Elijah Wood. Yeah,
Great
in
90s
his
movie.
in a lead. No, it was Josh Hartnett in the lead.
Well,
But no,
he was kind of co-lead.
I love The Faculty. That's I just went blank. The same guy that did Planet Terror and
Not
Desperado.
Rodriguez.
Yeah, no, Robert
Is it
Rodriguez.
okay? I was going to say there's
Yeah,
because it was the two of them in that one,
yeah. I
right? They
think
split it.
I could totally be. I think The Faculty was made by.
Yeah, Rodriguez. Yeah,
Was it Rodriguez? Okay.
yeah.
Let's tell the story of the history of body horror, because I think the 90s it's not a highlight of the genre, but it's important because
It was a heyday.
I don't feel like it was. I feel like it went a little dark. It lost a little traction in the market. I feel like the heyday was still
It
the
was at
80s.
puberty again. Like it burgeoned in the 80s. That's when
Well,
it was
that's
like
different
new
than
and fresh.
heyday. That's different than heyday.
But it was its
heyday
own
is
just
like it's Apex, it's Paramount.
Well, that's true. Sorry, I guess I did mean that more in a like it was very experimental. People were figuring it out.
People were figuring it out.
There wasn't that much to go on yet, so people were like, okay, what if this?
But they were leaning. I think what's important to talk about the history of body horror as it leads to today is because they were leaning more on just the visual aspect. It wasn't about saying more about the actual horror on screen. It was more of how can we gross out the audience? How can we, because I can't think of any, like I think of these examples, Candyman, Species. I mean, definitely in Crash you can, or The Faculty. They weren't trying to say something deeper, right? It wasn't elevated horror like we have today. And I think that's important because when we get to the 2000s, that's when we had that's when we had the birth of torture porn, where it leaned in it so hard. The body horror was, how can, like, this was the beginning of the Saw series in 2004. And for the record, I love the Saw series. It has a lot of charm.
Overall,
the first film is,
the first few were decent.
The first
one
film
was great.
The first one was, it changed the game.
Yeah.
But again, can anybody? Well, let's do another T-book tangent corner. Can anybody actually remember any of those plots? They were so convoluted. There's so many twists. I loved them when I watched them, but I couldn't tell you one from the other to the other. Like,
really?
But it doesn't matter, right? Well,
I mean, love for the 90s, huh? Very little love for the 90s.
I have love for the 90s.
Okay.
I just the 90s was more. What was the horror in the 90s? It was more of the OGs, the classics. It wasn't body horror.
It was still an era of a lot of franchises. You were still just seeing like Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
You were still seeing your Jasons and whatnot.
Friday the 13th,
things had not branched
Halloween.
out that much yet. A lot of the classic era was still kind of intact for sure.
Right. I
But
like the 90s for the record, but not for body horror.
I will agree with that overall, but another like honorable mention based on something that even you said, but like it is still one of my most iconic
Ooh, okay. Yeah. Throw it at me.
90s horror memories is the opening to Child's Play 3. It
Yes,
is
where
an
it does that
immediate
swirling, like,
yes.
yes.
Yes, it's the
I
one
know
where it
exactly what
basically
you're talking about.
rebuilds his weird doll corpse into a new one, like, it somehow
Yeah.
takes I don't it's been a while since I've seen it, but yeah, some aspects of that the assembly line somehow ingesting him
And I remember
and
this, like, swirling
rebirthing
motion
him yeah, the
camera, like,
blood like, 'cause the
thing.
blood his doll was, like, bleeding, it was gushing
Yeah.
blood, it was wild, it was really cool. That was, like, the cool I watched the whole movie because of its opening. They're not that great of movies technically, but that alone was pretty
Would
rad
you
and
consider
stuck
that
with me.
body horror, though? Since it
But
was a
that's that
doll?
I give it the honorable mention because of the fact that I would not show that to a child, even though it is just a doll. That was explicit. It was very direct. There would like the it didn't
Case in
need
point, I was way too young when
it
my
was
brother
reverse
showed me
I
that.
think it was reverse metaphor because it doesn't need the metaphor. It literally is already about a ridiculous concept where somebody has put their human soul into a doll and that's like their actual body now. So that yeah, if he got killed and then
Especially
he
since
got
he
like
has sex and whatever
ground into something and then like
sequel he has.
melted and squeezed and like pulped. It was almost the
It
same. It was
definitely stays
interesting.
with you,
It
but
did.
it's
It was rad.
arguably, I love to argue with Philip on our shows. Is it body horror, though? I don't
I
know.
no, but the opening, I genuinely do feel like it is. That
Okay.
really is an honor. I feel like they had it was so established with what Chucky is in its franchise that that counts. That like watching it,
Hmm,
it was like weirdly both disgusting and intimate. It was like watching a creature be birthed,
interesting.
in my opinion. And another thing that I will say for the 90s, again, nothing new, and zombies as a genre is obviously its own genre, but there's still something to say with how far practical effects but the burgeoning CG zombie stuff in the 90s also kind of went well, I feel like went a little wild. There was a few of the early 90s also had some of the most
Mm,
ridiculous like Night of the Living Dead and some of that stuff at this point.
well, yeah.
To
Okay.
where like
Yes.
that really
Because I was
became
thinking more of the 2000s with 28 days later, and
for sure, because that depiction of it as a virus is also another its own type, and I would agree that as a bioorganic version, instead of it just being like, supernatural, whatever you wanna call it, just magic, hoodoo, just no reason, it
yeah.
being like a specifically man-made virus is that counts. I would say that counts because those people are being transformed. So I would even say that, yeah, in that same respect, technically 28 Days Later counts. But even the gore aspect with the fact of where they got to making things not just like goofy that you can go back and watch people get ripped open in again like 70s and even some 80s movies and it just the effects weren't there. It didn't look that believable, so it wasn't disgusting enough. But they finally got to where they really could make
Oh man.
the realistic stuff. And
Sometimes
you
it's like,
really looked like you watched an actor get their guts torn out. It
yeah.
really was like, oh, dang, like you're screaming. You're screaming at the TV.
Yeah, no. I mean, to this day, when they do practical, I am still just flabbergasted. I think we both have already seen Weapons by
Yep.
now, right? So,
But
no spoilers, but man, there is a scene that uses some practical effects near the end.
you're like, make it stop. You genuinely are just like, stop
You're
it
like,
already.
you're
Like,
seeing someone being torn to pieces.
and
How
like
and
the cuts,
why
like what they were like,
will be a surprise, but
yeah, no, the 2000s was an interesting inheritance from what you're right, was kind of a dry 90s. It wasn't the best, but it was just they tried and it was the awkward teenage puberty years because
I
2000s
like that more. Yeah, they had
had some
some
really
pimples, they had some
interesting stuff
acne.
too.
They
Um,
they were grotesque here in the face,
I
and
did
then
not love the torture porn as
I didn't
itself. It
I
almost, like,
didn't hate it,
it did a
but
disservice at first. I remember at the time just being like, "Well, what the like, this is anybody could do this, it's just, violence for the violence sake."
right, and that's my point. They pushed it so far that it lost all meaning, right?
Yeah, it's
The body horror was no longer symbolic, it was just body horror for body horror's sake, just to like, yeah, just to let's see how far we can go to
yeah, I can make this look really real.
I'm
Let's
gonna
write a plot around this.
and I'm gonna try to top ourselves every movie, right? Like what bonkers thing can we think of next? Oh, what's if their body got crushed or torn or twisted this way and that way? And it was really more of just the elaborate set pieces, you know, kind of like I love Final Destination. This is not body horror for the record, but it is the exact same movie every time.
You know what you're getting.
You know what you're signing up
You know what
for.
you're getting. What you get all the way. Like, I think that was my gem already, but still,
And that was body horror.
the most
Yeah.
recent one was
Oh,
dope.
the most recent one was
It was
excellent. Oh my
awesome.
god. Gem of the week. What chef's kiss, beautiful film.
Mhm.
Loved it.
But,
Now,
yeah, that
yeah, 2000s, other examples. So the Saw series is, Philip, what? The gold standard of the
pretty much
torture porn
I have
body horror.
it's not that hidden or secret of a gem necessarily, but I will assume you've seen it. I'm very curious to know what you think about the movie Slither, 2006's James Gunn
Oh, I like
movie.
Slither, and it does get under your skin. No pun intended.
Literally,
Yeah.
very
It's
body horror.
I remember the
That movie freaked me out.
bloated woman scene.
Yeah, in the
Was
barn.
that? Yeah. I feel
Yeah.
like that one stuck with me. I've only seen it, I think,
That kind of was
once.
I think that was the build up to the extent, but still, like, the other aspects of the leech monsters and, like, still the main dude just becoming, like, essentially possessed or, just driven or like, a parasite got inside. However you want to describe that relationship of the, like, extraterrestrial life that comes to inhabit, Michael Rooker's character. But yeah, that whole thing leading up to the hilarious set piece of what is essentially like if ant type queen bug stuff applied to a lady who
Yeah.
happened to be fed in a barn. But even leading up to her being that bloated, just the way that, like, she was gorging on food. It wasn't just ooh, there's leeches, like, ooh, like, look at my skin. The similar to, like, in, like, The Faculty, like, some of it wasn't that
Yeah, it
they
was
were
some of
doing
the
what they
little
could with that,
things.
but even aspects of Slither where she's gorging and she
Yeah.
doesn't even, they did, the actress deserves a lot of credit, because it's one thing to have this concept, but for her to sell it, the whole, like, I don't know why I have to do this.
Yeah.
She knows that this much, like, it was a perfectly acted, and I think that's a lot of why that specific sort of line or of what's that, like, plot thread, that part of it
Yeah.
specifically, of that aspect of the queen part, that stuck with me more than anything, to be honest. Absolutely, that movie counts, but it's comedic.
Oh
That's
yeah.
one of the biggest outliers for Slither, and why I do wonder if it didn't land very well, because it was that weird middle ground where people didn't blend genres that often. You,
Hmm.
like, yes, you had your Sam Raimis back in the
I was just
day,
about to say that, like, Drag Me to
right? That,
Hell.
like, oh, if you've ever listened to this show, you've heard me talk about horror and how I love the funny ones. But it's weird how something
But it's
about
two
it
sides of
being,
the same coin. Let's be
yeah,
honest.
and
We
but
talk
it's
about that a
also
lot.
because this one being, like, again, like, organically based, terrestrial, this was an alien slash whatever species. It
Yeah.
wasn't just demons from a book.
Yeah.
And as well as the fact that, Evil Dead also was like 24 years before this or something.
Yeah.
So it was a world of difference between the two, but still that line is similar, and it's still Slither Slither is rad. And it's so funny seeing what
Mm,
James Gunn is up to now.
that was a curveball. Oh, I'm so, seeing how, following James Gunn's career, I'm younger than James Gunn, but I feel like a happy father in a weird way, because he came from humble beginnings, and you never
The man
thought that
loves
he would.
making movies.
Yeah, you would
He
never think
loves
that
them.
he became the king of Hollywood right now, with, like,
He
running DC, at one point running Marvel, like, doing
Yeah.
everything that is the big tent stuff,
I don't think it's
with
something he
Guardians
ever
of the
set out
Galaxy.
to do. You know what I mean? Like, it's nothing that he ever said, like, "I'm going to do this." He
He
just
just
set
wanted
out
to make
doing,
great movies and fun
yeah,
movies,
he
and yeah.
genuinely just enjoys it. I think he just has such a good time.
And I think I think we all do this, where we look at something like Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's like, "Oh, I can totally see why it was a home run." But he really took a lot of risks when you think about it, like casting Chris Pratt. He wasn't a leading man yet, you know, and all these things. And when I read about, that was the breakthrough, right? For him to get to that huge level, is, we're going to give this guy a chance to make one of a Marvel film, Guardians of the Galaxy, which to this day is one of my favorite of all of them. Is that
It was back when Marvel
franchise?
was better, for
Yeah,
sure.
and but it was so different. If you think of Guardians of the Galaxy versus any of the other films, it's wildly different with the
Well, it
humor and the
marked a
tone.
change. It
Yeah,
it had a huge
and
impact
that's
on the entire
because
rest
of.
of
And
Marvel.
my point is, that's because of James Gunn, and so many risks that he wanted to take, and that actually really paid off. And now so many. So there's so many copycats. But let's pull it back because we're going to talk about this for the rest of the show. And guys, you're
You're
not
welcome,
here for
Slither.
James Gunn. You're here for
Jamie, we know
body
you listen.
horror.
We love you. James
So
Gunn, huge fan.
other films in 2000s that you probably forgot about, we're going to remind you is, remember 2005 Hostel? That's considered a body horror film but again, torture porn. Then of course the infamous 2009 The Human Centipede.
It immediately, that's one of the earliest viral things. If you too, I mean, like the internet had, again, yes,
Just
started
thinking
in the
of
mid
how
to
they're
late 90s, but
connected.
it's wild. Like that movie's kind of old, and it also made such waves at the time for being what it is.
So, okay, I liked your metaphor of we had the infancy or the humble beginnings that were actually a breakthrough, and it's like a person growing. I like the story. I like your narrative of like, oh, this is puberty,
The
right?
awkward pubescent years of the 90s.
So at 80s we have the brand new baby that's fresh and new and everyone wants to look at it, right? We have the 90s where we're going through puberty, we're figuring things out. 2000s, how should I put it? If we're using the same,
it's further maturation.
Well, it's maturation, but we just turned 21 and all we want to do is party and get faced.
Mm-hmm.
We're older.
Yeah, we're extreme.
We can do more.
I'm an adult.
I'm an adult. I can do whatever I want now. But
you're not my real dad.
But they're also still a kid, right? But it's not until the 2010s that we really become an adult. We got a 401k, guys, and it's 2010s because now we're trending back to that more artistic integrity within the subgenre, and we're seeing more of that symbolism, and of course the metaphorical entities in the film, the items that you can point to and go, okay, I can understand how this is mirroring the narrative, And a perfect example of that is 2010's Black Swan, because Natalie Portman's character literally becomes a swan as she goes through the journey of the tortured artist. And we see her transform. Her literal body turns into a black swan.
I will say, I don't know that I've ever revealed this in an actual public before. Some people know this about me.
This is a Art of the Beholder exclusive?
Yes.
Okay, I'm ready.
My kryptonite with like body horror or grossing me out in general is like fingernail and toenail stuff.
Oh, okay. That's
I can't stand
it. I get it.
That's the most disgusting. It makes me like, I've genuinely come close to vomiting only because of that. I can watch so many other things like fingernails and toenails, man. I think part of it is because when I was a kid, I had a weird incident where my toenail fell off. Like on my big toenail, like my toe got smashed. Just the nail.
It always goes back to something that actually happened to you.
Yeah. And so that's one thing, but also mine they're like paper. They tear. They're so flimsy. They flip, and that's like my most vulnerable part of me. So personally, that aspect of any horror movies that like have that. So when she did the spin and up on her toenail and it I literally was, I'm getting nauseous. I'm gonna have to stop. But yeah, that part got me.
Yeah, well, you know what? I can relate to the fingernail toenail stuff, but usually it's in films. When it really starts to bug me is not body horror, just like dramas, like probably usually war epics where someone's being tortured, like a soldier's being tortured, and they do something to their nails, like they just tear a nail off, or they do the bamboo thing, or where I'm like
makes me.
When it's like torture, like when the idea of someone really going through that is rough to me. But when it comes to horror, for the record, I'm not sure if I've never explicitly said this on one of our shows, but since it's the Halloween special, the two things that get me that where to this day I have a hard time with them is anything that it's like biblical horror. So The Exorcist is probably, in my opinion, like one of the scariest films ever made. And then stuff that involves children or both.
Demonic children movies
get me, man. There's something about it I just don't like it. But getting back to the 2010s, this is actually the next one on our outline is a film I've been wanting to do a full long-form topical piece on for years.
To keep the metaphor going.
Oh, yes.
The 2010s really is when you actually start to have to like think analytically as an adult. Like your life has
Yeah,
gone
you
to
got a
shit,
401k.
and you start really looking inward of like, and
I
and
have
this
I have
is
children, I have bills to
yeah,
pay,
like
I
this is what
have
everybody warned me about. Like this,
yeah.
yeah, like that genuinely, like with the way I think the way it went after what happened all in the 2000s was they had no choice but to stop making it as extreme and exaggerative and not be
Mhm.
so hyperbole, but still showcase like the very real horror of what like everyday life, but especially like the physicality of these some of these things. Like that is its own long-term horror is the fact that someday you wake up, you're like, my whole body hurts for no reason. I'm just old. This sucks. So
Yeah.
you're condensing like a lifetime of fear into like certain moments in these ways. And it's like, touche. Like,
Yeah.
I see what
Well
you've done
done,
there.
sir. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Checks.
yeah, yeah, again, it's mirroring the narrative. It's mirroring the plotting. Like that's smart writing, right? When the things that you're seeing is actually there's a psychological aspect with their protagonist or antagonist or both, right? And yeah, what I was about to say is 2011's film The Skin I Live In is something I've wanted to do a long form topical piece on, like a whole episode for just The Skin I Live In. I love this film. It's a little more drama, than body horror, and I won't ruin the horror aspect for anyone that wants to see it, but it's also by a filmmaker Almodovar that I've been wanting to cover, like, career
Oh, Pedro?
retrospective for yeah, Pedro Almodovar. He's one of my favorite filmmakers, and this is like his spin on horror. It's not horror like Saw
Pedro
or
Almodovar has come so
Hostel.
far to where I would say a lot of people wouldn't know that they've seen one of his movies.
What a
He's
perfect
an accomplished person.
what a perfect AOTB subject, because like
I'd be down for that. Let's do it.
yeah, he needs to have a better spotlight on his career, and
That's it. It's on the books. It's on record
yeah,
now, dude.
yeah, one day we need to do a whole career retrospective where we just talk about him and his films, but we honestly, just The Skin I Live In, like we could maybe do 2 Halloween specials this year, like just do that film. Alas, we're still
We've
on
got
body
more
horror.
for you.
2013's Under the Skin. This is with
There's a
I saw
skin theme.
this, and this is with Scarlett Johansson when she was like, I'm gonna do weird artsy films.
Yep.
I love I love
She wanted to
ScarJo.
be taken seriously.
I love
I
me some
can't
ScarJo,
blame her.
and you're gonna see a completely
She
different
was
side of her
hyper sexualized, so of course she's gonna be
in Under the Skin.
like,
Yeah.
"I'm an actress, what like, pay attention."
And then 2016, we have Raw, and that leads us finally to our current decade, the 2020s. Now, guys, we're long-winded. Thanks for bearing with us.
We love this stuff. You're
We
here to hear
have
us gab.
we have more to say about not only the 2020s, right? There's a lot of great films, but we want to do what we always do and try to figure out, discuss why we're seeing such a huge, like the floodgates, the flesh opening for body horror. So let's, Philip, since there's a lot of films here, let's not gush about all of them, maybe one or two,
I promise.
but this is what I want to do more, is I want to discuss why. Why are we seeing, like, now we're in our 40s and 50s, we know who we are. We know we know who we are. We have identity. We have something to say. We are a fully realized person. So notable entries in 2020 include Brandon Cronenberg's. So this is David Cronenberg's son. He was destined to become a filmmaker, and of course specialize in the subgenre that is body horror. So in 2020 he made a film called Possessor. Excellent, check it out, guys. 2021 we have Malignant. In 2022 we have another David Cronenberg joint, Crimes of the Future. 2022 Fresh, again another Brandon Cronenberg joint. In 2023 Infinity Pool, of course a film we have discussed on the show. We did a long form topical last year. Check it out, click here. The Substance, 2024. And so far in 2025, two notable entries. There's definitely more, guys. Leave them in the comments, yell at us, however you want to get it to us. But the two that really stood out to me was The Ugly Stepsister. So we're seeing a lot of entries from the international market. And of course, just recently, Dave Franco and his wife Alison Brie in Together. And together, before we talk about why I think these films have become so prevalent in the 2020s, I will say if you haven't really gotten into body horror, Together is like a good like entry level
It's
body
not
horror.
it's
You
not
know,
that
it's not
hardcore.
hardcore. So with all of that being said, I have a lot to say, but I want to give my guest an opportunity to start the conversation. Why do you think since 2020 we have seen such an abundance of these films come to the market and be successful and become more than it? I feel like it's probably still a subgenre, but I feel like we're leaning to more of a dominant genre in the horror market.
It could be how far CG and stuff has come, as
Oh,
much as
from a
these people do
technical aspect. Okay.
practical. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think in a way, practical stuff has
So
come
the
so
ability
far,
to tell the
and
story has changed.
CG, that if you're able to even pair them together to where you already have a really good believable base, because some people do pure practical. Like even like what
Love practical.
the I think that one, the scene in It Part 2 where Jessica Chastain is in like a she's stuck in like a bathroom stall and it's filling up with blood. Like,
Oh yeah,
they
yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
dumped like blood like water on her. Like, yeah, there's wild aspects to these things. So to an extent, people just expect you to be very practical about it. So on a technical level, that's part of it.
But cultural, societal, global level,
Right. And
what's
even
your theory?
an aspect of that, how large, how widespread it could be is anyone's guess. But
Hmm.
I will go ahead and just say the shared global experience of the COVID pandemic as a
Hmm.
form of its own personal body horror could also be an underlying psychological aspect of that. Because we also all needed entertainment more than ever for like 2020 and 2021 for sure, when things were felt way more shut down and hadn't sort of gotten back to normal. So that there's multiple reasons why I feel like we've got that boom,
Yeah.
and that it's just been long enough since we've had all the practical stuff to where it's not anything new. You have cult
Right.
classics like The Thing. You have stuff like The Fly and even 90s movies where you can see some very intense realistic stuff. So it's not even that taboo. It's not that crazy depending on what you're trying to show.
Hmm.
I mean, even other recent stuff that that I was also thinking of to take it back, technically Lovecraftian, I think Lovecraftian counts. And other certain body horror-esque that Lovecraftian things too, that's been a weird boom as well. I almost wonder if it was an existential turning point, that's also just, again, like, who you are, you start to wonder, what am I leaving behind? Like, what am I really? Like, what's behind that? And
Yeah.
that is the true sort of soul-searching part of it, and realizing how universal the experience is, and what it can mean to stare these things down, is like, this is the abyss staring back. So even your the Nicolas, Cage, Color from Outer Space, or From Out of Space? What was it?
Oh, when he was just doing kind of these indie horror films, like it was like he did Mandy and he did. Are you talking about that?
It was in that same
That
time
same like
frame.
yeah,
Yeah, sorry, Color Out of Space. Like, I was gonna it sounded weird coming out. I just haven't talked about it enough. That counts. There's a lot of body horror in that, and the fact that it is also technically somewhat terrestrial because, again, it comes from outer space, but what you consider as a space creature and the way that Lovecraft looked at other entities, again, that's debatable, but that still is it's natural. It's that these things were always there and slumbering. So there's
yeah.
like it's a true existentialism, and that has also been an undercurrent of a lot of horror in the 2020s. So I think it's just the fact that it's become so fun to play with. It's become a thing that
Mm,
we have all been forced to acknowledge at this point. And so we've just really had a retrospective and have turned out a whole bunch of things about what body horror can mean to us. And then who
interesting.
knows what the hell that means for where else it has to go, because it's not going to just,
Oh, we have a
not
segment for
change.
that. We're going to talk about the future here in a minute. I think it's probably threefold. I think you're spot on, like culturally speaking. I didn't even think about the technical aspect of filmmaking.
Yeah, baby.
I wasn't expecting you to bring that up at all.
You can make I could make a movie that's as good as a 2010 movie at home by myself on a computer these days.
That is bonkers to think about,
Like, you
really, when you
actually
think about it.
genuinely, the people who just know enough and just can
Yeah.
buy a couple of nice enough cameras and have the good software, like, you can actually make some borderline Hollywood from 2005 level stuff these days. It is
That is true.
wild. So if you actually have a
I mean, you can
budget.
make a film on your phone,
Right,
like,
so
and
it's like if
people
you
do it.
actually have the budget for the scale of things to really sell it, depending on
Yeah.
the concept that you need to do, like, the other
Yeah.
parts are standard now. Those parts
It's
are just those are
it's
background.
doable.
It's the you can do a hyper focus on the specific aspect of it to better than ever.
I like well, I actually like that you kind of touched on that because I focused when I was like thinking about what I wanted to talk about in the show, I focus so much on the cultural components, the societal components, the existential, the philosophical. And I think a good starting point is where you started, which is the 2020 or 2020 and 2021 pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, where we're seeing everyone, ourselves, our loved ones, our family, and then the world through media and the news get sick and transform and change. And all of these things happen, and that, of course, it's going to affect us. And what do? We put it in our art. A lot of artists will put that experience in their art. I think that is definitely a component. I think the rise in not tech for filmmaking sake, but just technology in terms of AI, that we're losing touch with what it is to be human, and that we're finally I've been saying I've been sounding the alarm since 2000, I want to say 7 or 8. I don't want to brag, but I knew a long time ago, because of AOL, my experience with AOL Instant Messenger, that a lot of these things can become monsters. And when I saw social media, I was like, this is going to become a monster and become dehumanizing, and people laughed at me. They're like, what are you talking about? And now we're finally seeing a lot of the studies and things come to fruition, that a lot of this stuff is bad for us and it's affecting our children so negatively. And now we're adding AI on top of that, and the thing that was already dehumanizing is becoming more dehumanizing. And I feel like that is playing a big part in seeing body horror come to the fray more. And then probably something that, when I was doing a little homework, kind of surprised me, and I think it may surprise other people, maybe even you, Philip, to learn that I think seeing people's like sexual orientations, change and becomes such a huge part of the news cycles with the trans community and things like that. Because you can look at Together, for example, as a film that is about, two heterosexual mates literally fusing to become one person. But there's a lot of people argue that it's a story about someone transitioning
Huh.
to,
I
and I
had
was
not heard
like,
that take.
yeah, and I was like, oh, I never even thought about it that way,
Yeah.
that they are accepting themselves, right? It took two people to become one person, but what if it was just one person? The idea that one person can literally transform into somebody else. They did it this way, in a very body horror way, but to accept something that is so hard to accept and become something new. So I kind of looked at Together completely different. So those are the things that stood out to me. What the future holds is, honestly, AI and all that it's not going anywhere. It's only going to get worse before it gets better, if we have to be honest, right? So we're probably going to see a lot more body horror, is my theory.
I wouldn't argue with that. It'll be so easy for people to just make literally anything they can think of easier than ever. Like I said, it's the technological aspect. We've crossed a certain threshold. We're kind of in the uncanny valley now, right? The
You think
fact that
so?
you can literally tell AI to make you. There's things that I've already seen on Instagram and such that
Oh,
are
you're talking about the AI part of it, yeah.
yeah, the AI aspect of it. Anything is possible
And
now.
there's body horror there.
Yeah.
When we see like when I see AI slop and, just like people morphing into things, I'm like, Jesus
Or just
Christ.
how they have
Because,
extra fingers or are just imposed in ways that don't actually make sense.
yeah, and the valley is there. It's getting eerily
We're
too
we're
real. Yeah.
we stared into the abyss, and this is what happens when you stare too long.
Yeah. And so I guess maybe a good way to end this piece is to continue with our mortality metaphor, which is, if the 2020s is, us going through our 40s and 50s, maybe to a lesser extent 60s, where we know ourselves, we have identity, we know what we want to say. Eventually, we're going to get old and pass away. And so what becomes of body horror when things get to an extreme point, you know, with AI and all of these things in society? Like, how are we going to tell those stories? I don't know. But that's probably a good point to say we look forward to talking about it. But until then, let's tie a bow on this beat and tell the good people why body horror has become so prevalent as of late. in the last couple of years. Tell the good people why, Mr. Philip Church, and give them that too long didn't read.
I think a certain amount of societal consciousness has shifted to where people are looking for validation and universality and community and things. And one thing that literally every single breathing, thinking human being has in common is our literal breathing, feeling selves.
Mm,
And I think that is its own personal horror for most
yeah.
people even in a more practical way. I mean, there are still certain jobs these days that could see you dismembered. So I think there is something innately personal, something very universal, something very shared
Mm.
about body horror, and knowing that appeal makes it really good fodder for anybody willing to make that foray, of what it can mean to fear what little we even have that is truly ours in this world.
That maybe we are losing touch with ourselves and to
Or how much longer are we going to have control?
until it becomes our own real horror.
Or like our own prison in something too.
Guys, thank you so much for listening. We want to thank you. As always, I want to thank my guest, Mr. Philip Church of philipchurch.com. He's been our reigning champion this year. Again, guys, that was the genre that is body horror. Check it out. If you haven't gotten into it, now is indeed the time in the 2020s. Now, before we go, guys, we got a little extra for you, a little icing on the cake, a little cherry on top with what we call the gem of the week. Now, before we talk gems, let's talk sponsors.
Art of the Beholder is brought to you by Zencastr. Zencastr is our go-to tool for remote podcast recordings. What's great is that you can record separate audio and video tracks, and it's all backed up on a secured cloud, so you never lose your hard work. Even better, it's easy to use, and there's nothing to download. So go to Zencastr.com, Zencastr.com, and use promo code Art of the Beholder to get 30% off your first 3 months with a pro account.
Now back to the gems. My gem is I'm just going to do one, pass it back to my guest like I always do, and that is I finally got around to seeing 28 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that guy was that guy made my wife
the fact that is like the memed thing about that movie tells you everything you need to know.
It made my wife blush. She brought it up immediately. She's like,
right. Like genuinely, I feel like there's either a gasp or a laugh.
He is an alpha for a reason. Anyways, honestly, we did some gem of the weeks, and like if you haven't seen the recent stuff, The Ugly Stepsister, Together, check out. I think I just want to pitch, or I want to give love to the international market. We're seeing a lot more body horror from around the world. It used to be a lot from Japan, and of course here in the West, here in the States. But we're seeing, I think, The Ugly Stepsister is Norwegian. You're going to be reading subtitles.
Darren Aronofsky, go see Caught Stealing. Watch it. It's fun. It's a good time.
Oh, non-horror. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know if the gem had to be on theme, but...
oh, no, there's no rules.
Okay, cool. Because I was going to say that they don't have anything to do with it. But it was very good.
But I'm going to cut this out. No, I'm kidding.
Go for it. The other one is just the author Ray Bradbury. I love his style.
Deep cut. Guys, if you like that, you can always check us out at novadayproductions.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do all the things. Follow us at _Novo_day at AOTB podcast, AOTB.podcast. If you want to hire Philip for his amazing voice, Philip, tell him how to do it.
I have a website, and it's just my name. And that is Philip with 1L, philipchurch.com.
And if you'd like to sponsor our little love child or be on the show, you can reach out to us at novadayproductions@gmail.com. So until next time, you know what to do. Be good to each other. And as always, good luck. Godspeed. We love you.
Art of the Beholder is brought to you by Novo Day Productions. Created by Novo Day and Theodore T. Buckingham. Written, directed, produced, and edited by Novo Day and the NDP Collective. Starring Philip Church of philipchurch.com. That's Philip with 1L. Alexandra Parsons of alexandraparsons.com. ALEXANDRA-PARSONS.com. With special contributions by Theodore T. Buckingham. Music by A Company, Instagram handle A_CO_music_. Logo design by Tom Justice of thejusticecompany.com, JESTUS. Thank you again for listening. All rights reserved.